So welcome into our second frame relay configuration lab. This lab is also included as part of the work files as Frame Relay Lab 2. And really the only difference between this lab and Lab 1 is that I have removed the DELC between Chicago and Birmingham. More accurately, I've removed the virtual circuit by deleting the DELC configuration in the frame relay switch. So essentially now we have a hub and spoke network with Dallas at the hub and Chicago and Birmingham as the two spokes. So we're going to configure this network to use point-to-point frame relay connections. This lab, like I've mentioned, is a fresh start. So all of the commands we did previously in that multi-point lab, they're all gone, and all we have left are the loopback interfaces at each of these locations. So let's start the configuration. First, let's start in Dallas. We'll go into config mode. We'll do interface serial 0/0, and we'll do encapsulation frame relay. Because again, we're going to use sub-interfaces because we have two different virtual circuits, one to each of our locations. So now we're going to do interface serial 0/0 and put a .101 on it. Now you don't have to make the sub-interface index or that sub-interface number match the DELC, but it helps with troubleshooting and it's just a good way of self-documenting your network. We have to tell the sub-interface configuration that this is a point-to-point link. So in this case, we're going to say point-to-point, and we'll hit enter. Now we're going to configure an IP address on this sub-interface. You'll notice that the IP is configured on the sub-interface itself, not on the master serial interface. So we'll do IP address 192.168.1.1 with a /30 subnet mask, because again, this is exactly like a point-to-point connection. Now there's one more bit of configuration that we have to do on a sub-interface. We have to tell this interface which DELC to use. Again, when you're using it directly on the serial interface, as we did in the last lab, Inverse ARP and AutoDiscovery will figure out what DELCs you need to use. But since we're using sub-interfaces, the serial interface is going to see multiple DELCs coming in, and it does not know which DELC to assign to which sub-interface. So in this case, we're going to do frame relay, interface DELC, and the DELC going to Chicago is 101. So we'll put interface DELC 101. And we can specify the DELC format. We'll leave it as Cisco encapsulation, which is the default, and we hit enter. We also have a few options to configure the DELC itself. Again, we're not going to do any of this at the CCNA level. I just wanted to point out to you that you actually are in a different configuration prompt here, and you have to exit back out if you're going to configure any other options on the sub-interface. So let's go ahead and configure the other sub-interface. So we'll do interface serial 0/0.102. And we have to say point-to-point. We'll do IP address 192.168.1.5 with a /30 subnet mask. And we'll do frame relay interface DELC 102, because that is the link that's going to Birmingham. So now let's exit completely out of this configuration. Oh, I forgot to do one thing. Config T interface serial 0/0 no shut. So now the serial interface is up. Now let's go ahead and configure EIGRP while we're here. So we'll do config T router EIGRP 100. We'll do no auto on the EIGRP. We'll do network 192.168.1.0 just so we can reuse the configuration. And we'll do network 10.10.0.0 with a class B subnet mask like so. So now that Dallas is all configured up, let's go over and configure Chicago. We'll actually pause here. We'll configure Chicago and Birmingham in the next video, and we'll see if the network comes up and performs as well as it did when we were doing multi-point frame relay.